Welcome to Topic 2 DQ2 video on how to complete direct quote and paraphrasing. The reason why I'm creating this video is because usually students follow their peers and they end up looking at their classmates' post thinking that that's how it's done, when in reality, they're probably getting it wrong and following in the footsteps of point deductions. Uh, the reason why there's point deductions and no redos is because there's enough videos and examples students should follow. You should never click on posts to see what other students are doing. Never. Look at the directions and just key on that. Watch videos if there's one, key on that. You do your answer. And then later on, if you see that other people or other classmates are doing it differently, then you can ask the instructor if you did it right, or you can look at the grade book to see if your DQ is graded. But I would not follow your classmates. Okay. So, um, here's a video on how to do this. Now, look, here's an example. First, you're going to review strategies in page 70 to 73 in the textbook. Okay. You're going to apply some reading strategy to finding a direct quote. Okay. Your answer should look like this. This says, here's an example. So you want to give me your topic that you chose in week one, because each week now is going to build up on the next. You're going to take a direct quote and you're going to cite it appropriately. Now, citations are very easy. There's a pattern to it. So when you use a direct quote, you're going to use the author's names, the year of the article, and page number. There are no initials or abbreviations or anything like that. So if, let's say, Ross has an initial of a K and you put Ross K period, you'll get a point deduction for it. Okay. You have to learn how to cite correctly. That is part of the requirements. All right. Now, after you take the direct quote, you're going to put it in your own words. So whatever your quote says, you're going to paraphrase. So paraphrase means you're writing in your own words. Even though you're writing in your own words, you do not own the information. The author still does. So if you take a quote and you write and you type it out in your own name, in your own words, notice how Ross and his peers are getting the credit for the citation still. Okay. They're doing that because you didn't do the study, neither did I. Ross and his peers did the study. So even if you write it in your own words, it doesn't mean you own the information. If you write it in your own words and do not cite, that is a form of plagiarism because you are stealing someone's content. Okay. And then here's a reference. All right. So citation and references are two different things. Here's a citation. The in-text citations are in the paragraph when you're writing your assignment, your essays. When you use words like this, when you're presenting a fact or not a fact, but a presenting a source information from a research article, use the citation. A reference gives your instructor the actual article. So in the body of the essay and also in this DQ, you'll be putting just the citation. So then when the instructor wants to go check to see if the reference is, if the article is legit, we'll see the rest of the information in the reference page. That's what that's for. Okay. So that's what you're going to do. All right. Now, where do you get your information? So you're supposed to use one of your research articles, one of your peer-reviewed articles that you found in Brainstorming One. Now, if if I were you, I would go look at the brainstorming articles from week one and look at the gradebook comment, because I may have said, do not use article number 3 because it's not peer reviewed. That might have happened. Okay, so you don't want to use an article that's not peer reviewed. All right. So if you see a point deduction, it's because you did not complete those 5 articles correctly, most likely. Okay. Um, Now, where do you find your source of information? So I'm going to pull up an example here. All right. So let's say I'm going to use this one as an example. Of course, your topic is going to be on something else. It's going to be on bullying. It's going to be on something that you chose in week one. I'm just using an in general article in psychology that I found for my dissertation. Okay. Um, Now, this was written by Bauman and Shika. Now, again, when I do citations, I'm not going to put any of their first names or initials. I'm just going to use Bauman and Shika. Okay. Now the year on this one, usually you'll find up here. Let's see. This year is not up here, so it's going to be down probably somewhere around here somewhere. It's funny how this one, we'll find a year later. But the whole point of this article is, you'll find it, here it is, 2010. So my citation will be in parentheses, kind of like what I had here with Ross and Miu all the way to Miu. Mine will say Bauman and Shitka 2010. Okay, that's what will be inside the parentheses. All right. Now, where am I going to get my source of information? This information here, the abstract, you can get your end results here. Okay, but what I want you to really do is focus on the part of the article that's the most important. You probably saw my research article video, Where to Find Information. Now, a lot of you start reading this beginning part here. This is not where you're going to take your information. Here's where students get confused. They'll take a source of information from the introduction area, like from here, and they'll see Cooper 20 or Cooper 2000. So they'll cite that. That will be incorrect. Okay? That is not where you're going to get your information. This introduction area is just a case building of the researcher saying this is why we're doing our research study. Okay? So you don't ever use the introduction part or any kind of theoretical framework. Okay? This stuff's probably good information to read, but you don't need to read it necessarily for what you're going to do. Procedure is just telling you, sometimes it's the method, where under the message section, tells you where the participants come from. You don't need to talk about that either. Okay. Um, as you go scroll down, you're going to find your information here. You can look at the results and start reading. Now, sometimes the results section is a lot of numbers, and even for me, I don't understand it at times. That's where a lot of people, students who are going for their PhD, hire a statistician. That's very common. It's very rare that somebody that's going for their PhD knows how to read the statistics. So sometimes it's not just number statistics, sometimes it's qualitative too. So you could take a look at this right here. If you know what an ANOVA is and all these numbers are, most likely we don't know what that is. So as you scroll down, you'll probably start to see a lot of this stuff here with tables. Now, usually after the results, you'll see a discussion. It usually says discussion. Sometimes it says other stuff like conclusion or something like that, or summary. That's okay. This is where you want to read. This is the nuts and bolts of your art research article. Okay. Now you'll see stuff like, as previously mentioned, you don't use those information. You want to find what the researchers actually found. The current study evaluated, and you want to keep going here, okay? Anytime you see anything about previously mentioned, don't worry about that. You want to find out what this researcher did, what Bauman did, and Shitka did, and what their end results were, not what anybody else has done. Now, sometimes you won't see these citations in here. Sometimes you won't, okay? Like this, the fact that we found that only 50% of the people are prone to correspondence bias is intriguing. So that's a fact that I could use in my research article. And then when I'm writing my essay, that, Bauman and Shitka found 50% of people are prone to correspondence bias. Okay. Now, but I wouldn't use a quote. I would be paraphrasing. You're going to stay away from quoting in your essay. So this whole thing here you could read through, and this is where you'll find a lot of information. Okay. Sometimes at the end of this research articles, you'll see stuff like limitations, and all that. And limitation section is just telling you what could possibly change the course of the study if different variables were put into place that weren't in place in the first place. So, you know, that's what you're going to do. So after you take a quote, you'll come over here and you'll use the quotation marks for quote, and you'll cite it appropriately. Now, if I used Bauman and Shitka, and let's say I took the quote from here, let's say I took this quote here, okay? Now I'm not going to use a citation because basically what this citation is saying is, for example, this article that was written, this is the actual fact of what the researcher said, not to confuse you. But this is what the researcher found. I'm going to copy and these words word for word, and I'm going to use Bauman and Shitka with parentheses. Paraphrase is after I take this quote, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to write it in my own words. Notice how this is smaller, this paraphrase is smaller than the main quote. Okay, the reason why it's smaller is because you're writing it in your own words and you're talking about the main fact that they found, the main source of information that they found. Okay, you don't have to, if a quote is 30 words, that doesn't mean you have to change 30 words or write 30 words. Or paraphrasing also doesn't mean changing a few words in a quote. No. As you notice, if you read this paraphrase section is just telling you the main point you want to get across that you found in that direct quote, and then you cite it appropriately. Okay. Again, I know some of this stuff can be confusing, but you're going to use a discussion area. And like I said, if you see stuff written saying like, as previously mentioned, cruel et al. And all this other stuff, disregard it. Find out what the researcher did at the end, and that's what you're going to use. If you have any questions, please let me know too, because, I know sometimes this stuff can be a little confusing. Do your best, but I definitely would not follow your peers' examples. Okay, use these videos here to help you out. Okay? Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.